can be ready. There you go. Okay. Good evening. That was an odd sounding thud. Welcome everyone to our Williamsport City Council meeting. It's Thursday, September 19th. We are in Trade and Transit 1 in Community Theater League first floor. Please rise for the invocation by Councilman Randy Allison, followed by the flag salute. What's going on? There you go.
Heavenly Father, we come thankfully tonight for all that we have and all that we have before us. Lord, we ask you to lead and guide us. As we finish up this third quarter of the year, we're coming into our heavy workload, Lord God. And that's not just City Council, that includes all of the administration. It's all hands on deck, Lord. And we have so much work to do. And our goal is to do the best we can for our city, our citizens that live here, and for the communities that are around us and depend on us for things, Lord God, to help them with. Lord, we thank you that you have all wisdom and knowledge. And I pray tonight that you would impart that to us so that we can make the right decisions that'll be the best for everyone. And we ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item 3, approval of City Council meeting minutes from September 5th, 2024. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments, questions, changes to the meeting minutes? Hearing, seeing none. Mrs. Franklin on the motion for item 3.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Item 4, limited courtesy of 4. We don't have any requests that I'm aware of. We'll jump around for just a little bit. We'll see how long, I guess. Let's jump down to item 9, Mrs. Frank.
A resolution authorizing the engagement of Percibelli and Williams as conflict counsel for the zoning hearing board for the city of Williamsport.
Is there a motion and a second? So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Narr, good evening, sir.
Good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Bider, members of council and the administration. What we present to you is a resolution request for a conflict of attorney representation. The city currently uses Fred Holland for our zoning hearing board, but there has been some times where there's been a conflict as far as some of the clients that he represents. So therefore, what we've asked Mr. Scott T. Williams to do is stand in for him as an assistant zoning hearing board representative. And this is just merely so that we get it on the books and we can get him paid when he does service for us.
This did not go to committee. Any comments or questions from members? He's a pretty well-known local commodity, so. Okay, here you see none. Then Mrs. Franklin, item number 9.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Let's jump down to item 24. We have a lot consolidation plan for 3388 West 4th Street. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mr. Narr.
What this is a lot consolidation request from Steve Lingle. He currently owns the 2 parcels. What he's looking at doing is consolidate them both into one lot for to put an addition onto his home. He currently owns both of the lots. Putting the addition, he wouldn't meet the setback requirements. So is consolidating these. It did go before planning for review. It did go through Lycoming County planning as well. And it's before council for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Narr. Any comments, questions, concerns with item 24? Here you can see none. Mrs. Franklin, item 24, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Item 25, subdivision for 2483 Trenton Ave. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mr. Narr.
This is a one lot subdivision request from RCPA LLC located at 2483 Trenton Ave. The current land use is currently Conrail track system. It is within the MH zoning district. The proposed plan is to subdivide with lot number 1 containing 2.74 acres and portions of the Conrail tracks 7, 8, 7, and 5. A 15-foot railway right-of-way access agreement will be provided for maintenance that'll allow both properties to get in and maintain their property. The residual will contain 23.909 acres, numerous rails, and a building structure for maintenance. It was reviewed by Cumming County Planning as well as City Planning with positive recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Nar. Any comments, questions, concerns with item 25 from members? Here you see none then. Mrs. Franklin, item 25, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Ryder.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. And then item 26, we've got a land development for West Pharmaceuticals on 2021 Reach Road. Is there a motion and a second? So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mr. Nar.
What this is a request for a land development request from West Pharmaceuticals for a small building addition. The current land use is a manufacturing facility. It is located within the light manufacturing zoning district. The proposed plan is to construct a 1,500 square foot addition. Stormwater runoff will be directed to the retention basin, which was approved in 2022. If you recall, a larger land development plan came back before you in 2022 and was approved. They're just going to be using the stormwater basin as part of that process. Previously, Planning and Council approved an addition in March 2022. The plan was reviewed by city engineer Eric Smithgall, and I do have consistency letters. The plan was reviewed by the Cumming County Planning as well as City Planning with positive recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Nar. Any comments, questions on item 26? Hearing seen none. Mrs. Frank on item 26, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Ryder.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Gary, thank you very much. Thank you. Let's jump up to item 5. We have reappointments for the Building Codes Appeal Board. We have 6. Melissa Rankish. I hope I pronounce these right. I apologize if I don't. Walter Nyman, Anthony Visco, William Erdl, Kermit Grove, and David Daniker. All are reappointed for 5-year terms starting September 18th, 2024 and ending June or July 1st, 2030. Is there a motion and a second? So moved. Second. Motion and a second. Ms. Mealy, I know you just got here, but
I am more than happy to support these.
well,
I am more than happy to support these nominations.
so you and Janice individually, I think, in combination with Mr. Nar, I think have kind of spearheaded the recent effort to get a lot of our reappointments back up to date with the Building Codes Appeal Board. These are all reappointments. So I just wanted to turn it over to you. I don't know if there's anything specific you want to add related to each of these. I don't know if any of them are here tonight. I don't think so, but I can.
One of them's actually out in Sedona, Arizona, but I can't speak to the rest. But
yeah.
This is so I guess we can start off the discussion by saying that Austin White was kind enough to point out that in fact all of these folks, even though their terms have currently lapsed by in some cases as much as 5 or 6 years, serve until they either resign or until we appoint someone in their stead. So all of them are still current members of the committee. That said, it seems wise since I think I can speak for both Janice and myself and say that we were both very surprised at how willing everybody was to come back and serve on the board again. One of them, I believe, even said, yeah, that was fun. So anyway, so you know, all these folks were willing and or eager to attend another Building Code Board of Appeals meeting, and it seemed like it would be wise to reappoint them so that we have locked in 5-year further terms in case we need their services, which hopefully we won't. But since we did have a request, and it is of course somewhat on us that we didn't have the board wasn't current and updated. I think we do need 1 member for the board and alternate.
Chris? Yeah. I don't know if you can hear that up there, but it's pretty nuts down here.
I would advise all of you
That's the
All
problem.
right,
Okay.
thank you.
Just tell them to get their microphone way closer to their face. Yeah, thank you.
Which was the opposite of what I did. So there you go. I learned something.
Chris, you're on a roll tonight, buddy.
Yeah.
Well played, sir.
Anyway.
It's a maze. Good luck.
Mhm.
Anyway, sorry, Liz.
Yeah, no problem. But I would say that while this board was perhaps a uniquely bad example of lapsed terms, we do, of course, have a whole bunch of boards and commissions in the city that could use some members. I know I've spoken to someone about 3 people who are interested in serving on the HARB board today, and I'll reach out to them to see if we can get that board to a more fully staffed position. But we do need to revisit multiple boards and commissions, and it seems, this might sound crazy, but it seems like a moment when people finally feel like they're having a little bit of free time and are interested in volunteering. So we should seize the moment and try to get ourselves back up to snuff.
Yeah, I would second that. I mean, there's a number of different ways to get involved across a number of different facets of what city government does in the community. Outside of a couple of different avenues of how that process works, if you have any interest in being involved, just reach out to somebody, whether it's any of us on council, the mayor, our city clerk, the mayor's executive aide, any of our department heads, like literally anybody in the city will get you to the right person depending on what you're interested in. So absolutely. Any comments or questions related to the reappointments? Okay. Hearing seen none, then Mrs. Frank on item 5.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Thank you all for your work with the reappointments to the Building Codes Appeal Board. Let's jump to item 8, Mrs. Frank.
This was removed from the table.
Yep,
So.
this is removing from the table.
Resolution awarding construction services for the Memorial Park Fitness Court project to Lycoming Supply.
Is there a motion and a second? So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Scott, good evening, sir. Or I'm sorry, I have to take a vote to remove from the table first. Mrs. Frank on the vote.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0 to remove from the table. Mr. Scott, allow you to kind of reintroduce this if you like.
Sure. Good evening, Council President Yoder, members of council. I'm here to represent for your consideration a resolution that was tabled at the last council meeting. This resolution is for awarding the construction services for the Memorial Park Fitness Court project to Lycoming Supply. Their low bid was $77,759.00. The scope of work involves the construction of a concrete pad on top of a stone subbase with a tile on top of that, and then the fitness equipment will be placed on top of that. So this is funded by a CDBG grant. So in the last couple of weeks, Valerie, Austin, and myself reached out to ask them for references. We did that. We got 3 very strong references that have done a lot of work for those references. Everything checked out. You know, this is a small, non-complex project. I think they're a good fit for it. Yeah, Austin, do you want to say anything else about that?
I think that covers it pretty well. I mean, we reviewed the qualifications material, everything that was submitted with the bid package, and everything looked fine. I did like a litigation search and things like that. And it's, you know, it checked all the boxes that we felt needed to be checked.
Thank you both very much. Appreciate the context on from 2 weeks ago from the discussion. Any additional things from members beyond the responsiveness component that Austin and Mr. Scott have relayed to us here today?
Aside from thanking Austin and Scott and Valerie for right. And Austin and Bill and Valerie, pardon me, for doing the due diligence for us. I appreciate that.
Vice versa.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay, hearing and seeing none then, Mrs. Frank then on the motion for item 8.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
We'll jump to item 10, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution Amendment 3 to Professional and Administration Services Agreement between the city and CEDACOG.
Is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Fessler, good evening. The
Good
floor is
evening.
yours.
Thank you. I believe Jamie Schotter from CEDACOG is also available via Zoom. Is she? Yeah,
Yep.
great. Okay, wonderful. As you mentioned in the title of the resolution, I'll just give a brief summary of what the amendment will entail. So CEDACOG will develop amendments to the city's 2018 through 2021 annual action plan. And the purpose of these amendments is to reallocate CDBG funds from completed activities into new activities.
Okay. Did this go to finance or did there?
Yes.
No,
They all
oh,
went.
they all went.
to
in.
finance.
I couldn't
did.
remember if this one did or not.
They
Liz,
did.
anything to chime in on?
Well, just that we were at the time looking for the actual information that went with the agreement and or looking for the agreement that went with the resolution. But we received that, as Valerie pointed out, it is some relatively minor stuff. Obviously, the fee for it is relatively minor. And we didn't have any major questions aside from looking for the agreement that accompanied the resolution.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from members? Okay. Hearing see none, Mrs. Frank on item 10.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. If everybody's okay with it, anticipating no real issues, I'd propose maybe we do 11 through 14 together for expediency a little bit. So if anybody wants to make a motion to open up discussion on items 11 through 14.
Sure. I'll make a motion that we open up discussion for agenda items 11 through 14.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. For the record, these are all CHOTO agreements between the city and Lycoming Habitat for Humanity. For the record, Janice, I'll spare you the time of reading them all 4 out loud. Ms. Fessler, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So as you mentioned, these are all CHOTO agreements between the city of Williamsport and Habitat for Humanity dating from 2022, 23, 24, and then also one agreement out of the Community and Economic Development Program income account in varying amounts, 30,000, 45,000, 30,000, and 300,000. Just a little bit of background on this. As part of our annual allocation of HUD home funds, we're required to allocate 15% of our annual allocation to a community housing development organization. And this is just execution of that requirement.
Thank you.
These funds will specifically be used by Habitat for Humanity to construct single-family homes at 1620 through 1628 Scott Street. And they've already constructed 2 homes. So these will be the last 4 of 6 in their row of new homes that they're constructing.
Thank you, Ms. Fessler. Ms. Mealy from Finance, anything to add?
No, the only interesting element, well, not that it isn't all interesting and not that we're not delighted to see the projects on Scott Street get underway.
Yeah.
Get underway because this is a really neat project and I'm excited to see that parcel of land become something other than empty grass. But of the chunk of discussion that we had in the finance committee meeting was that the city had a pot of money, which I actually was under the impression was better than $1 million, about 1.2 of home funds that had come back to us when people paid back loans on loans through the home program on pieces of property. It turns out it's more like 900,000 with this $300,000 leaving it, that'll take it down to about 615, I believe, 614.
$994,000
Okay.
is the amount prior to the $300,000
Okay.
allocation.
So 394 then. Valerie says we're under some pretty serious pressure to spend it because we're not supposed to be banking. Well, it sounds like a bunch of it came in one fell swoop. So it was kind of a slowly building pot of money that then somehow took out about $500,000 in a year, right?
Yeah, so HUD encourages us to spend our program income account down before we spend funds out of our annual allocation. So because this chunk of money is so large, we would like to move this money to Habitat, and then our department in consultation with the mayor and city council will be presenting some other options, ways for us to move larger amounts of this funding so that we can become in compliance with that. And then in turn, the annual allocations that we receive will not become non-compliant because we wouldn't be able to spend them, if that makes sense. So we're looking forward to presenting some projects and ways to get this money spent to support the community.
So yeah, I think that's the sort of undeveloped part of these agreements is that we still have close to $700,000 in HUD funds that will need to be allocated either to organizations. I was advocating, but I'm not certain if it's possible for trying to do further home buyer assistance with this fund, with some of the money, because my understanding from local realtors was that it would serve a need. It would fill a need in the community if we could offer that. So but I think there were also, you said, other organizations locally that could benefit from it. We don't have any other certified CHODOs.
Not at this time, we do not.
Right.
But we are able to have more than one.
Right. Do we have any that are possible? That is to say, I mean, LNDC, I don't know.
Not at this time, we don't.
Okay, all right.
And these funds in the program income account follow the same exact program guidelines as our annual allocation of home funds. So that's something to keep in mind as we start to develop some plans.
Got it. Anyway, yeah, I'll defer to Randy and Bonnie who were at the meeting on Tuesday, but I think that was the only thing, and that we will, I believe, be arriving at a firm 15% allocation moving forward, right?
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
Instead of a wandering number.
Yes,
Okay.
I shared in the finance committee meeting that the annual action plans for 22, 23, and 24 had already been created prior to my coming into the department. So we're following the funds that were allocated according to the city council approved and HUD approved action plans. And that's where the 30,000, 45,000 and 30,000 came from. But moving forward, we will try to stick to the 15% of the annual allocation. And the annual allocation is typically between $225,000 and $300,000.
All right. Any other comments, questions, thoughts from other members on these 4 CHODO agreements?
I doubt that pretty well covers everything.
Let's do a good job on it.
Okay, Mrs. Frank, then on the vote for items 11 through 14.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Ms. Wexler. I would recommend we do the same thing with items 15 and 16. So we have 2 resolutions authorizing essentially some name changes for our equity funds for some of our retirement accounts. Is there a motion and a second to do 15 and 16 together?
I would make a motion to consolidate agenda items 15 and 16.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Mrs. Livermore, good evening. The floor is yours.
Good evening, council members. I have these 2 resolutions tonight. They are authorizing the addition of me, the finance director, and the administration as authorized agents to the city Williamsport Police Pension Fund for the equity fund and the fixed income fund. So it's basically just adding me to the fund as an authorized agent.
Thank you, Mrs. Livermore. Any comments, questions from members of council? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank, on items 15 and 16, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much, Ms. Livermore. We'll move to item 17, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution minimal municipal obligation for 2025.
Is there a motion and a second?
Move.
Second.
Motion and a second. I will open the floor to Ms. Hart. Good evening, ma'am. Welcome.
Good evening. President Yoder and to members of the council. We are presenting the minimum municipal obligation for the year 2025. Attached, you'll find the financial requirements for the police, fire, and officers and employees pension plans. These reports were completed by Mockenhoff, the actuary and consulting company for the pension plans, using the actuarial results from the January 1st, 2023 valuation and the data from the city provided regarding the employee compensation. The total obligation going into 2025 will be $4,307,972. And at the time that this MMO was completed, the state aid for 2024 has not been received in yet. However, we included the years previously, 21, 22, 23, to give kind of an indication as to where we may be receiving 2024 at. And I believe we may have
Sue Trout from Mockenhoff is on.
If we have any kind of questions. Ms. Mealy, I'll turn this to you as well. This was a addition to finance.
Yep, yeah, and we actually did ask some questions in finance, and Randy and Bonnie may have helped me reconstruct what some of those were. But Sue, are you out there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, absolutely. Just wanted, before I started talking to thin air, wanted to make sure that. And okay, so the questions I think that we asked in finance that couldn't be entirely addressed in finance related to the significant decrease in the amount of the officers and employees pension fund. We presumed that some of that probably related to the loss of RVT or the transition from RVT to RVTA.
Yes, that was part of it, but the majority of it dealt with the lowering of the amortization cost from the previous year's MMO. And I can explain the reason for that if you would like.
Sure.
First off, thank you for allowing me to address all of you and the opportunity to speak. So our actuarial valuations are done every 2 years based on Act 205, which governs your pension plans. So the previous MMOs were based on the 1/1/21 valuations. This MMO for 2025 is based on the 1/1/23 valuation. And you had some significant amortization costs fall away. So congratulations on that. The amortization costs are shown in an exhibit in your valuation reports. And what they basically are is a carrying cost anytime we do a valuation where the real life experience deviates from what we assume will happen in the plan. It can be in the forms of gains and losses. And so every valuation, there's booked a gain and a loss, and we carry the amortization costs on a schedule in the report over time. So a lot of the carrying costs that we had, most of it associated with previous losses from the 08-09 time of recession that were carried for a number of years, those have fallen away. So that combined with the, the change with the RVT employees lowered your costs. So it's actually very good news. But I can also circulate the valuation exhibit that shows the change in the amortization cost if everybody would like after the meeting or whenever you need.
I think that we're all kind of looking, I believe we're looking at that, the financial requirement and minimum municipal obligation, the fund documents. It sounds good. So but we did increase the assumption. Did we increase it on both police and fire last year?
You are currently, let me double check where you're sitting. So for the 23 valuation, I think what you mean is you decrease them. So the interest rate was, it's 6.7.
Yeah. Right. So
6.75% in that officers and employees plan. I think, let me just double check in the other plans if we're at the same dollar level. And obviously, the different demographics and the different benefits come into play with those assumption recommendations. You're at 6.70 in the police plan as far as a form of an assumption in this valuation. And in the fire plan, let me just double check though. I remember us having a lengthy discussion about these.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to figure out whether we realized there was one in which our amortization payment actually increased slightly, and I was making me wonder if there was only one assumption decrease.
The interest rate assumption decreased also in the fire plan to 6.75%, as we discussed. So all the plans have a carrying cost of amortization, and like I said, as we do each valuation, a new cost gets booked. But you are correct in your thinking that we did discuss the assumption changes with the interest rates in each plan and set them at those numbers.
I guess my larger point is that we would have been likely to see a greater decrease, presumably, if we hadn't, or a greater decrease in the amount of the MMO if we hadn't decreased our assumption. Correct?
I agree. Correct.
But also that we picked a good moment to do that because we still are paying in less money to the MMO, despite the fact that we decreased the assumptions for a couple of the plans. Which would lead me to my final question, which is that something we should be thinking about doing again this year? Because it would, while the 2023 valuation's in place, it would potentially have less of an impact than it might moving forward.
So
do we think that the assumptions are in a good place for the moment?
Well, to be genuine, it's almost too soon to say. The reason for that is because the next valuation cycle starts at 1/1/25.
Right.
The actuaries begin looking at it later in this fiscal year. A lot of the concern comes what's going to happen with the markets, especially whenever you watch, the Fed dropping rates on Wednesday, half a basis point. And also with a presidential election year, the markets tend to have a possible change. So they look at the assumption changes mostly in the last quarter.
Sorry, we'll be working off the 23 valuation for next year's MMO too, correct?
Yes, as long as I would think that we would, because we'll be coming to you in 2025 with a new valuation cycle. But it will depend on the timing is the real answer to your question.
Okay. All right. Well, this is probably not something we need to get into the weeds on right now, but I guess we might appreciate your guidance if there would be any wisdom to decreasing the assumption again while we're in a relatively good valuation, and we can likely afford to is of course a term of art in the case of the city. Well, we can better afford to. So if you have any guidance for us on that, that might be useful moving forward.
Absolutely.
Okay. That said, would anybody else like to give the speech right now about how if we fully funded our pensions when we created them, we wouldn't have to be paying this money out?
You're on a roll. Let's hear it.
I know.
You're here.
I know. I may screw it up because for some reason I'm not much of a financial mind frame tonight, but so please correct me if I make any misstatements. Every year when we do the MMO, I feel as though somebody has to point out that the minimum municipal obligation, what we have to contribute to our pension fund this year is $4.3 million. We are fortunate that we will likely benefit from assistance from the state to the tune of 1.5 of that, but that is still a $2.8 million contribution from the city's general fund, trying to make up lost ground on pensions that we did not fully fund in the first place when we granted them. And it is the reason why I am such a pain in the ass every time somebody comes and says that we need to buy a truck and nobody saw that purchase coming or anything like that. It's because if we fund the expenses that we know that we are going to have, we do not screw future generations. Pardon me, Chris, I probably can't say that on television. This is kind of an annual reminder of money that we would have for more police officers in the city, for parks maintenance, for other obligations in the city, if it had been properly funded when we created this obligation decades ago. And we are in a pretty good position in terms of our pensions. Compared to many other third-class cities in the state of Pennsylvania. Like most other third-class cities in the state of Pennsylvania, we are in no position whatsoever with all of our other post-employment benefits, which we are funding on a pay-as-you-go basis. So this is also money we could be putting into that had we fully funded at least one of the two obligations when we promised them. It's I think just a moment for reflection on the responsibilities of government to budget responsibly, not just for the present, but also for the future, so that we're not saddling, two generations when Adam's kid and my kid and Randy's grandkids and Eric's kids are all sitting on city council in like 20 years. We don't want them to be cursing our names.
Because they probably will be for other stuff.
Right. Yeah, because they'll have plenty of other reasons too, right? And they'll all be in therapy. And this shouldn't play into it. Anyway, just a little soapbox moment, and now I will yield the floor to somebody who's not as bitter about this. Okay.
Well said.
Okay.
So that's the reason why you get upset.
Vince, do you really want to Vince?
Well said, Liz. Well said.
That button is pushed every year.
Are
we haven't
there
even gotten to the budget yet, and you're telling you all we should raise taxes by $0.25 mil.
Let's not open that can of worms. We'll be there soon enough. All right. Any additional comments, questions on the MMO resolution? Okay. Here you can see none. Then Mrs. Frank on item 17, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Let's go to item 18.
Resolution authorizing an agreement between Williamsport Bureau of Fire and C&M Property Services LLC.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second, Chief. If these were all the same people, we'd streamline them. They're all individual contracts.
Yeah.
So for the record, we did procedurally just streamline a couple of these. They're all going to the same place or they're related. So that's why we do that, just for expediency. There's nothing super controversial. These are all individual contracts with different entities. That's why we don't do that. That's more for the public. But anyway, Sam, sorry.
Not a problem.
Welcome, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. So before you is a resolution for electrical service and installation for a 20 by 20 shed that we are purchasing through the use of the Pennsylvania Municipal Fire Department grant, capital grant that we received from the Fire Commissioner's Office. The price will not exceed $1,850. Basically, we're running electric out to it. We're cleaning out what's called our stock room, which is where we keep our extra equipment, spare equipment, those kinds of things. Our goal is to turn that into a training room. So everything that's in that stock room will be moved out to the shed, and we will install a dehumidifier out there to control the humidity. So there's the metal parts and stuff that are out there won't rust.
None of your stuff went. Sorry, none of your stuff went to committee. Any comments or questions from members on this? I mean, I could be wrong here. And this is a good thing. I mean, the value seems really low. Are we sure we're in a good spot scope wise? I know this is not a big deal, but I just, it seems like a low number for the scope. So
yeah, actually, it is pretty much just running the wire.
Okay.
That's pretty much all it is. One of the other companies contracted to do the excavation and the installation of the conduit.
Yeah. Well played, Gary. It's good. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Biter.
Is this not something that we could have had done in-house with Scott Livermore's?
No, they've been tied up with a lot of other projects, and the timeline in which we have to get a lot of the grant work done. It doesn't fall within. We're still working on from the previous grant that we received, getting the firehouse painted.
Okay.
So
okay.
We did discuss it with Scott, obviously, and that was his suggestion, that if we could swing getting it done by a third party. Yep.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions, Mr. Allison?
Yeah, thank you. I had an opportunity to talk to Chief before the meeting tonight about some of these things, and it just confirmed that for a long time we did not do the required repairs on the fire department facilities for a number of reasons. A lot of times it was tax time and all those kinds of things. In any case, to Ms. Mealy's point earlier, if you don't take care of things in anticipation, for whatever reason, you're going to have everything come at one time, and we're just in catch up. But these are very much needed things that they're for the most part pretty small, but they have a big impact on the ability of the fire department to work as efficiently as they need to provide the services that we need for the city. So I think it's a great thing that we're able to address so many different issues here at one time.
And if I may also add, this was a grant that we had applied for last year. We weren't successful. I believe there were, of the 200 departments that applied, I believe there was only 11 that received it last year. This year there was only 6. Wow. So again, I want to commend Valerie and Melanie for their great work. So
bravo.
Here. Any other comments, questions? Mrs. Katz.
So what you're saying is this went through our grant writer to get this, and it's proving itself out that it's really well worth its weight in gold. Really
absolutely
is. I mean, to be able to find these grants. I mean, there's so many things out there, and unless we have one person that's doing this, we miss out on a lot. We really do. So I'm happy to hear that.
And it also frees up the department heads, the administrators, to be able to do their work rather than have to go in and do a report, the final report, the update, the reporting updates and everything. So
that's more work at times.
It is
to make sure it's done correctly.
Yeah.
When you don't know how to do it in the first place.
So thank you, ladies.
Any other comments or questions? All right, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frankel on item 18, please.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mr. Biter.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Item 19, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing an agreement between Williamsport Bureau of Fire and Party Enterprises.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Chief?
Okay. So this is a renovation of the women's restroom at fire headquarters. When the building was built in 1980, it wasn't prepared to receive female firefighters. Right now we have one female firefighter and an administrative aide who both utilize that restroom. Unfortunately, it's a very small room. We're trying to get as much out of that space as what we possibly can, to include adding a wall-mounted locker for our female firefighter. So that bathroom has pretty much not been touched as far as updates, remodeling or anything since 1980 when the building was built. It's got the same shower, same toilet, same sink, everything. So with receiving the new female firefighter, we thought that it would be appropriate to make space for her. And the amount that we received was $19,142. And again, that's coming out of that the municipal fire department capital grant.
So it's coming from the grant? Like the resolution looks like.
No, I'm sorry. No, I
Capital
apologize.
projects.
This
Okay.
one's coming from the fire capital projects. Sorry.
None the worse. That's okay. Okay. Any comments or questions from members? Ms. Mealy?
So it looks as though we're going with option one. Okay. But what is option one? And, not that it matters a whole lot to me, but just trying to.
Yeah, so what that is, it's redoing the tile that's in there that goes, I think it's 5 feet up.
Oh, I see. Never mind. That's the option two. Okay.
So, and then the tile floor, the shower stall, the toilet, the sink and vanity, as well as installing a locker.
Well, anyway, that's both surprising and exciting. And I'm glad to see the restroom getting, the women's restroom getting a bit of an upgrade. We had budgeted that in fire capital projects, so this is one of the items coming from the increased sale amount of the trucks.
No, I believe this was coming from the capital projects budget. We did have it. Please.
It should be coming from capital projects.
Right.
I'm sorry. I
It is.
didn't see the resolution, but it shouldn't have, it is budgeted for.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Which leaves us then with almost nothing, right?
How much was
With
19,142.
There's a little less. It was the women's locker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 3,500.
Okay.
Okay. I'll make a motion to amend then. The final sentence of the first paragraph to read this project is funded out of
American Rescue Plan.
American Rescue Plan Act funding, but don't we have to be specific about the fire contingency, or is that okay? Anyway,
I'll second that.
Okay.
Any comments, questions on the motion to amend? Hearing seen on Mrs. Frank on the motion to amend.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to amend passes 6-0. Back to the main motion. Any other comments or questions? Good to see. Mrs. Frank on the main motion for item 19.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Item 20, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing an intermunicipal fire services agreement.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Chief.
Okay, so similar to the intermunicipal government agreement that we entered into last year with Susquehanna Township and Nesbitt Volunteer Fire Company, This one is an agreement that is between the city of Williamsport, Williamsport Bureau of Fire, Old Lycoming Township, Volunteer Fire Company, and Woodward Township Fire Company. They are, what the process or what the thought there is, they would like us to respond to their working fires primarily. And they will pay us $600 for backfill. So if we send 3 guys out of the city that are on duty, we have to call 3 in to backfill for those positions. And they will pay for that backfill.
Okay, any comments or questions, Mrs. Katz?
You've worked on this for over 2 years, if not longer.
With different departments, yes.
I mean, and I'm really happy to see that this fell into place because I think you expanded it further than what you first started out with.
Yes.
And that was the biggest situation that we wanted to have in writing is the cost factor.
Right.
And to come down with that, I think is, really good. Really pleased that you were able to do this. Like I said, you put a lot of time and effort into this one.
Absolutely.
Mr. Biter, is this replacing any current agreement that we have?
No, it's not replacing any. We have a mutual aid agreement.
Okay, so this is separate than the mutual aid agreement that we currently have with Old Lycoming Township.
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
Now, if I may just ask the question of having Old Lycoming, the Township of Old Lycoming on here, how are they then paying us if we have somebody stationed at Old Lycoming? Are we sending?
So, Old Lycoming is not paying us. That
Okay.
would be Woodward Township Volunteer Fire Company.
Woodward is the only one actually paying us.
Correct.
From this.
Correct.
Got it.
We receive, we have the alliance with Old Lycoming.
Correct.
And we receive in lieu of. So they pay for the truck, they pay for the fuel, they pay for the heat, lights, and everything for the fire station.
And I assume that you're working on other municipalities to get that same kind of mutual aid agreement like
We
you
are.
have with Old Lycoming?
We are actually
like Loyal Sock and South Williamsport.
Yeah.
Bring them over and
We actually did have a meeting recently with Loyal Sock and spoke with the chief from South Williamsport. So we're working together, trying to work together and move forward and try to have something solid in place.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other comments, Mr. Allison?
Chief, a few years ago, maybe more than a few, there was a lot of discussion about regionalization of fire departments. And the state seemed to be very interested at that point, and were kind of driving it, trying to drive it. Has that kind of fallen by the wayside?
I wouldn't say that it's fallen by the wayside. There's still a lot of discussion going on with that. Right now, with agreements like this, it answers the here and now. It's right. An immediate, it's a Band-Aid fix, if you will. Because, obviously there's other types of calls that Woodward Township, Nesbit, that they respond on, that they may not be able to get a crew out to respond to it, or an appropriate crew. So, there's times where, like for a lift assist, we use that as an example in Old Lycoming Township. Sometimes they don't want to get out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning to go pick somebody up. So in order to fulfill that call, we respond.
Right.
So, but there's a lot of with today's volunteer departments, obviously the numbers are going down drastically. As I told you before, there's under 30,000 volunteer firefighters in Pennsylvania, whereas 40 years ago, 1980, there were about 300,000. So a lot of these municipalities, they're not going to get the same service that they once did for free.
Right.
So there absolutely, there's going to be some difficult and tough discussions that need to be had.
Yeah, and particularly the state needs to be leading the charge on that.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Mrs. Katz.
Chief, is it true that a lot of the volunteer fire departments and their volunteers, a lot of them have 9-to-5 jobs?
Absolutely.
And a lot of the companies don't let them leave their jobs anymore. Is that a fact?
Yes, absolutely is a 100% fact.
Why do you think that happens? Why, you know, it doesn't make sense that for that is.
Obviously, I can't speak on behalf of, all the business owners or bosses, but it would, for me, they have a responsibility to their bosses to make sure that if it's a manufacturing company, that the job gets accomplished, and if somebody goes out to answer a call, that, it doesn't, that takes away from the business.
It's really a hard call. It really is.
It really truly is. I remember as a kid, Western Auto up in Jersey Shore. I went down to get something, a bicycle seat or something like that. And there was a sign on a call, be back when I'm back.
Okay.
But, we don't have that anymore, obviously. The volunteers are unfortunately a dying breed. We're very fortunate to have the volunteers that we have in Lycoming County. We do work hand in hand with them, them coming to us going to them. So
how is the education and quality of the volunteers? Or, they don't get the same testing that our paid fire departments.
That's not necessarily true. There are volunteers who are very adamant about getting training. They go out, they get their firefighter 2, fire officer classes. And they have more, some of them have more training than some of our guys. So we hired one in 2022 who has almost every class that I have. And I've been on the job for 32 years.
Wow.
So he has, fire officer 3, I believe, firefighter 2. I mean, he's got a lot of classes, and he came from the volunteer world. So,
well, you look at it, and everybody in the fire departments, they love what they're doing, and you see that all the time.
Absolutely, and that's why the majority of us that are on the fire department that were volunteers. That's why we're on the fire department, because when you go to work and you love the job that you do, you never work a day in your life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chief.
You bet.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, here you see none. Mrs. Frank on item 20.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Item 21, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing an agreement between Williamsport Bureau of Fire and True Grade Excavating and Hauling.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Chief,
Okay.
back to you.
So this is for the demolition of the old shed and installation of new stone soil base for a 20 by 20 double wide shed. As I explained, the shed is going to be used to store a lot of our equipment. True Grade will also be doing the excavation for and laying of the conduit for the electric out at the shed. For a total of $2,791.75. This will be funded through the PA Municipal Fire Department Capital Grant.
Thank you, Chief. Is there any comments or questions on item 21? Mrs. Katz.
Chief, are you still utilizing the building in Newberry?
Yes.
That's still being utilized. Did that ever get cleaned up?
Not yet. We've been waiting for an answer back on the City Hall study.
Okay,
So
thank you.
you bet.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on item 21.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Item 22, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing an agreement between the Williamsport Bureau of Fire and Trophy
Is
Sheds.
there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Chief, back to you.
Okay, so this is for the purchase and installation or setting of the 20 by 20 double wide shed. The price was $16,540 and it is paid for through the Pennsylvania Municipal Fire Department Capital Grant.
All right. Any additional comments, questions on item 22? All right, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on item 22.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. And then item 23.
Resolution authorizing an agreement between the Williamsport Bureau of Fire and John Savoy and Sons Incorporated.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Chief, back to you again.
Oh, okay, last one. So this is a grant through the Pennsylvania Municipal Fire Department Capital Grant once again. This is for new custom lockers for in the men's locker room at fire headquarters. The lockers that we have are falling apart. There's drawers in them that aren't even drawers anymore. They're just a rollout. But we were fortunate enough to get this grant, and the goal is to make sure that the guys have a secure place to put their personal belongings.
Okay. Any comments or questions on item 23? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank, item 23.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Chief, hang on one more time. Let's jump up to item 7.
An ordinance, transfer ordinance number 13 in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Second reading of your transfer ordinance. Chief, anything to add?
No.
Any comments or questions on second reading for other members? All right, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on item 7.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you all.
We'll jump to item 6.
An ordinance approving, editing, and exclusion of certain ordinances as part of the various component codes of the codified ordinances of Williamsport, Pennsylvania in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. So final reading, this is just updating different ordinances from the prior year. Do it every year, nothing to add from first reading. Any comments or questions in second reading? All right, here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on item 6.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Janice, did I miss anything except for 27?
We got it all, but.
All right. We'll move to item 27, except for filing Veterans Memorial Park Commission from July 2024. And I think that's it. No, I'm sorry, controller report. But it's not saying what one. Give me 1 second. There is one in the file here. And I just cannot remember what date. I think it got cut off when you printed these, Janice. So just give me a second.
June 27th.
Yep, from the controller's report from June 2024. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments, questions on either of the items we're accepting for filing? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on item 27, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0. Item 28, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be on Thursday, October 3rd, 7 p.m. back at Trade and Transit 2, 3rd floor. Upcoming meetings, Tuesday, September 24th, 11:30 a.m. is Redevelopment Authority. Tuesday, October 1st, 11:30 a.m. Public Safety, 1 p.m. Finance, 2:30 p.m. Public Works Committees. Wednesday, October 2nd, 9 a.m. Economic Revitalization, should it be needed. Thursday, October 3rd, next city council meeting at 7 p.m. Any comments from members of city council? Mrs. Katz?
I'd like to thank CTL for having us come here for our meeting tonight, but it also proves that we really don't have a stable home and which we have to really work on.
Yeah, here.
That's my personal opinion.
I would second that. I'm grateful for Community Theater League. They were extremely helpful, extremely accommodating in having this meeting here tonight. They were an absolute pleasure to work with. Very grateful for them. And to your point, Mrs. Katz, very excited to see what we see later this year with the City Hall study. Because I would agree. I think this is an isolated incident. I'm hopeful, but this is an example of renting, unfortunately, for city government. Yes. Any other comments from members of city council? I'll announce we're going to have an executive session following this regarding legal matters. I would also just like to congratulate the American Rescue Workers. They had their 90th birthday celebration today. They do a lot of great things for the community in terms of helping those in need from a number of different areas. And so just congratulate them on that, and look forward to their continued work in the community.
Amen.
All right. Any comments from members of the administration this evening? Okay. Any comments from the public this evening? Okay. Any comments? There's nobody from the news media here. Take a motion, a second for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We will see you in a couple weeks.